Hello and welcome to College of Lore. I'm Jill.
My name's Kate, and we have JF with us as well. Welcome, JF.
Hey, how's it going? Happy to be here.
Yeah.
So we've got something kind of special today. We're going to be creating some Dungeons and Dragons characters. I mean, that part, I guess, isn't super special, but what makes it special is that JF has created an interesting, different, and more involved way of rolling characters for D&D. So we're going to be play testing that homebrew a little bit today.
Yeah.
A bit about the system, give a bit of a summary.
Sure. The idea basically came of two places. One, I wanted to come up with a system that would involve role playing while making the characters, so make the creation of the character a more involved thing that you play. And I'm also just a big fan of like any type of story that involves going to like a hero school kind of thing. So like your Harry Potters, your My Hero Academia. I'm a big fan of like the Persona games, and so the idea of like people going to basically like adventurer school to become adventurers is something I've wanted to kind of play around with. So this idea that I have kind of came from both of those things, and this is the result. And I'm hoping to see if all the weird, crazy rule changes I made and came up with make sense and don't just completely break what Dungeons and Dragons like made over the course of several years.
Yeah, I'm excited to see if we can break it. I mean, take
Are
advantage
you muted,
of this.
Jill?
Oh shoot! Yep.
Oh, can you say that again, Joe?
Yeah, I muted myself because I was clicking around.
I thought it was me.
No, I muted myself. I'm looking forward to see if we can break it, but I actually hope that we just enjoy making some new characters. But if we break it, it's going to be pretty interesting.
Sure. Honestly, like the biggest thing is that I just want to make sure it's balanced and it doesn't seem like it makes your characters too subpar.
Right.
One of the things is that I want characters to start at a decent level, so that's why they're by the end of this year, guys are going to be level 4, which is a good starting point.
Mm-hmm.
I like playing level 1 games, but it's like it's very daunting in some ways because like there's very little you can do, and it's kind of very dangerous for a long time.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I don't want characters that are super powerful off the bat because there's no room to grow. So even though you guys are going to be level 4, your stats and your abilities are going to be, kind of mediocre at first.
Yeah.
But that gives you the opportunity to get better and stronger in ways outside of leveling up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Else that's kind of unique that caught my attention when I was looking at this is that by design, every character is a multi-class character, right? At the end of this. So you're either 3 levels in your primary and 1 level in your secondary class, or half and half too.
Yes. And the idea of that, it was like thinking about going to university and how you'll have a major and a minor.
Yeah.
Or if you're level 2, you're kind of have a double major. But yeah, you pick the subject that you're going to be studying, and then you're going to take classes accordingly. And the way it'll make sense once we go over it, if the classes align with, and I'm going to use the word class in 2 different ways here, but so hopefully this makes sense. But if the subject matter of your classes align with your character class, like Paladin, Fighter, Rogue, whatever, you have an easier chance of going through those classes, those subject classes. But you can take subject matter that is outside of that. It's going to be harder because it's not in your wheelhouse.
Right.
So, yeah.
Little tip, you can say course for the classroom.
Yeah, for your courses. Sure. When I wrote down the material, I wrote something different. But yes, your courses, you can take different courses, and if they line up with your class, then your course, you're going to have an easier time passing those courses.
Yes.
There we go.
Yeah.
In my job, I always switch between using course and class. So like that synonym is very prominent in my mind.
Perfect. So I mean, if we can get started, unless there's anything else you guys want to go over first.
No, I'm ready to roll.
Okay. One of the things I recommend for you two and anyone who I guess would be using this in the future if anyone does, is have a scratch sheet for the actual character creation. I would recommend not putting anything on your actual character sheet until the whole thing is done. And then once you have all your information, then you can make a nice clean copy and put everything down, because there's a lot of things that are going to change back and forth. You're going to take stuff on, you're going to put stuff on, take stuff off, change things. And then you just end up with a really messy sheet, which nobody wants. But once you figured out all that stuff, then you can make your nice clean sheet and you're ready to get going for the real thing afterwards. And like I said, this is meant to be kind of played. So like typically, if this was a larger group, this would be a session, which would be character creation. And it might even run more. It could be 2 sessions depending on how things go. And that's not even accounting for just going over the rules and explaining how things work. So this is kind of like a little minutia version of that, and we'll see how we can get it done. Okay. Also, if I blabber too much, feel free to tell me, because I will.
It just makes our job easier.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're like, okay, ready. Yeah.
So I sent a copy of a document to both Jill and Katie, and I also placed it on their Discord. I don't know if the link is on Twitch, but if it is a PDF document, and anyone who wishes to follow along they can do so. And I find for me, being able to look at what's being said and read along helps. So if that helps anyone else watching, then by all means, please do so.
If we turn this into a YouTube video, would you want us to put the link in the YouTube video chat?
Yeah, sure. I can leave the PDF there.
You'll have to update the access to anyone with the link can view, maybe?
Oh, that's what it should be.
Okay, mine's telling me that I need access to request access.
Oh, really? Give me a quick sec here.
I just pasted the one from the Discord channel.
The most recent one?
The one that you posted in the chat to everybody.
Okay. Let me see here. Share.
Same thing for me.
Get link. Oh, yeah, you're right. I goofed. Okay, so I will repaste that.
Oh, okay. Does it change the...
I don't...
No, it worked. It updated.
Oh,
I can click it now.
Updated.
Yeah, you fixed it.
Perfect.
Well done.
Technology.
Yay!
Okay. So do we want to give people like a moment just to, if they want to grab the document, that they can?
Yeah.
Probably just jump in.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's nobody.
So the first thing.
So.
Okay. So the first thing that we are going to do before anything else is we want to basically decide some of the very basic things about your character. So that is your character's name, their race, their gender and pronouns, their age, and their background. Now, some of these are self-explanatory, while some of them are a little more in-depth. So your name, that's straightforward. Basically, like I write in the documents, it's what's the local barista is going to misspell when you get your coffee. And also what you want people to refer to you as. So you can have like a full name and then also like a nickname that in-game people would call you, right? Although, you don't always get to choose your nickname, so people in school might end up calling you something else. Race. So I have a list of races that I will accept for this game. There's quite a few there, but there's a couple I didn't add in just because for me personally, I find them too complicated and confusing. And I figured that like it's good to have limitations, but then again, there's plenty of races to choose from there.
Oh yeah.
What the big thing with my game is that the only thing that you get from picking a race is the racial abilities. So there are no racial score modifiers. You don't have any any tool sets or learned things at all from your race. So the only thing I said, so for example, if you choose Dragonborn, you will have your breath weapon, but that's it. So you don't get bonuses to, I think it's strength for them and charisma, possibly. I don't know top of my head, but those stat modifiers do not apply. So the only thing is whatever your racial ability would be. Gender, male, female, anything in between, non-binary, trans, whatever you feel comfortable playing. Like I said, I will accept any kind of character at my table, and I will accept anyone at my table. So whatever makes you feel most comfortable is welcome. Age is another one where is special for two reasons. First of all, you have to play a character between the ages of 12 and 20, because that is the age in which the school will accept admission. And when I say 12 and 20, that's like actual 12 and 20. The reason is I don't do fantasy ages in my games. So whether you are a human, an elf, an Aasimar, everyone kind of lives to be somewhere around their 80s, and living past 100 is like in real life. It's a huge deal. So everyone kind of ages like a human. I do that for two reasons. One, because it's simpler, I find, than keeping track of fantasy ages. And also, if I'm like, oh, this thing happened 100 years ago, you can't just be like, oh yeah, I was there. That was like 2 weeks for me.
Yeah.
Like, no. So yes. So, and the reason why, like I said, 12 to 18 is because I wanted to pick an age where it made sense that you could go to like fantasy school, basically, and finish at an age that you'd be old enough to be able to go adventuring on, and not be like people wouldn't super worry. And since it's 4 years, like you graduate at the age of 16, which is kind of like, in fantasy terms, like what like they would consider you like, oh, you're a young adult now. We expect you to be able to to help with society and do some things and yada yada yada. Of a side note, I've also included that there are certain activities in school that if your character is not of that age of 16, that they will require parental consent, in order for you to attend certain things. But I just thought it might add some fun things, but that we'll get to that in background.
Okay, well, I have chosen a couple things. I've chosen that I'd like to be a centaur, because that sounds fun. And I'm going to be a 15-year-old centaur.
Okay.
That's all I've got so far.
I've got 16-year-old dragonborn, because I've never rolled a dragonborn before, I don't think.
Okay.
And you said the word dragonborn right when I was going to write it down, so it got written down.
Sure.
And her name is Clevelane.
Clevelane?
Yeah. Because that's the series of letters that came out of my pencil.
Oh.
And there's an
I hear Clevelane rocks.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. It like kind of popped in my head as I started writing. But they colored Cleve for short. Okay.
Also, I know this is not going to show for anyone watching this, but I did send Jill and Katie a link to a document, an Excel sheet, basically.
I can drag it over our faces for a second if anyone wants. If I should do it as a demonstration.
Sure, and that's going to come in later. It's their basically curriculum that they're going to be keeping track of. But if you want to punch in that information there and somewhere in there as well for me, so I can keep track of your.
Oh, just like on the side or something.
Yeah, anywhere like where I can read it.
All right, I'll do that.
Because that way, it'll be easier for me to be able to see that stuff without me having to jot down some stuff.
I'm gonna mute myself while I type. So if I try to talk and I'm muted, it's because I've done this.
Okay. Are you able to? Am I good to keep going with explanations? Okay. Also, if anyone in the stream watching, if anyone has questions at any point, feel free to ask questions in chat. I'm not going to be able to see them, but Jill and Katie will be able to pass it along to me.
Yeah.
So the last thing that you need to figure out before you start attending school is your background. So background is a couple of different things in this sense. First of all, I just want like a simple paragraph kind of explaining what your family upbringing is like. You're an only child. Have you had a happy childhood? Something that of noteworthy, just to give us an idea of who you are as a person before you start attending school. It also means background in the sense of the D&D term, where you have something like folk hero, or I'm trying to think of anyone else at the top of my head. I think there's a merchant one. So in the player's handbook, you have these backgrounds, right? Yeah. Now, what's interesting of note is that background you're going to choose is not your background. What that background is supposed to represent your family background. You're not going to get anything from that, but it sets a precedence for when you go to school later. You might have an easier time learning certain things because of your family background. Does that make sense? So you would choose an actual background from the book, but you would do so for your family history kind of thing.
So PHB, which happens to be right here. Be right back.
So I'm thinking of using Urchin. I was kind of picturing this character to have a lot of siblings, to the point where it was kind of she felt a little bit overlooked, but then there also wasn't a ton of money. Maybe Urchin would be the closest thing to that.
Sure. And that's the other thing too, is you don't have to stick 100% to what the definition is,
right?
But you can take what it says, let's say Urchin again, what that definition is, and you can kind of mold it to make sense for you. Mm-hmm. And that's fine, because it's kind of just to give us an idea of what your family situation was like. And then those skills that you would be able to get from Urchin are things then that will be easier for you to learn in school. But we'll get to that later, and it'll make more sense.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I didn't want it to be a negative thing that she had a bunch of siblings and not much money. It's just kind of she didn't need much. She's very resourceful, maybe, and very, Yeah.
And there's nothing stopping people from having bad things in their past. Not everyone's past are super happy, and sometimes a lot of good things can come out of bad things. So, and obviously this is just for fun, pretend, and you pick something that'll make your character's story interesting, and you're comfortable and happy with playing with.
Yeah.
And the last thing in the background is very straightforward. All I want to know is from your parents if they were kind of like your normal parents. Were they kind of easygoing, or were they strict? So easygoing, normal being in the middle, and strict being they're pretty strict, demanding parents. And that's the thing I wanted to know from that. So your background being your just your personal history before going to school. I know if you're a 12-year-old, you don't have that much history, but you can still have something to talk about. Your actual technical background, as in urchin or merchant or whatever, that would be tied to your family. And whether your parents, if they were really easygoing, laid-back parents, kind of more in the middle, or if they were really sticklers for things and strict.
Okay.
The biggest reason why I bring the parents kind of attitude into this is because if you were to play a character who is underage, if you have to ask for permission to do things, are your parents likely to say yes or no? And depending how strict they are, it'll up the roll for persuasions and things like that. But the youngest character, I think, is Katie at 15.
Yeah.
So really, you would only have to do this for the first year of school. Yeah. And a lot of stuff only kind of opens up in second year, where this is your first year at school. We really want you to focus on your studies. Once you've been here for a while, then we allow you to start doing more things outside of the curriculum kind of thing.
Okay. So you said 3 things for the background. Whether your parents are strict or not, your family background, and then what was
the third one is just a short little paragraph explaining what's your history, tell me about your character, basically. I grew up in a family of shepherds. My parents were very strict. I didn't have any friends growing up. I had to take care of the sheep all the time. Or it could be like, oh, you know, we live in a big kind of forest commune almost, where like all the people who lived there were basically family, and like I had lots of friends and it was great, you know. So that kind of like your personal history in that sense of background.
So for Margot, which is the name of my Centaur character, I'm imagining that I'm going to take the Outlander as the family background. And so I'm imagining that, not very far from what you said with the commune thing, but it would be much smaller than that, like a very small sort of isolated band of Centaur is where she grew up. So
Sure.
she would be like very close to the people that she grew up with, but they would all be sort of very close family members. It might not be just like immediate family, but like uncles and cousins and stuff.
It could almost be like a family clan kind of thing.
Yes, but like it's pretty small, and people tend to like go off, and that's why I'm here.
Sure. Yeah. Also, I suppose like one of the questions too you can answer in this is why you chose to go to basically Adventurer Academy. What made you want to become an adventurer would be another good thing to know, because I always like to know what is pushing people towards that life, I suppose. Keep in mind too, like if we were doing this for real, I would give you more background and lore about the world that you inhabit. But you know, just for mechanics purposes, like that's the kind of thing that like I would want from someone when they're filling out their backgrounds.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
whenever you guys are good with that, I will move on to the next thing.
Okay, do you want me to tell you about what I chose?
Yeah, absolutely. So tell everyone about your characters so
Okay,
far.
so Cleve, as she is known to her friends and mainly just her siblings, because they are her friends. She had lots of siblings growing up. They had a lot of fun together, but often felt overshadowed by the older, more accomplished siblings. And they would all leave and go off and do great things, and she was starting to feel a little bit left behind and a little bit, like overshadowed. So now she's choosing to go to Adventuring Academy because she wants to show that she can make something of herself as well and prove her worth compared to her siblings. And so she's really always comparing herself to what her siblings have achieved. And I said that the parents are fairly strict with their morals, but very loving and caring.
Yeah. Margot's parents are like very hippy dippy and not very strict at all. And they're like, Lord, find out what will happen. And so Margot has grown up to be like very clever and like a problem solver, kind of MacGyver type character, where she wants to be like prepared for anything that could happen, but is also like really good at, okay, well, we've got this and this and this, and so we can create this thing and whatever, figuring out the solution to the problem.
I was picturing Cleve as like the opposite, so very dependent and very like, this is my first time out in the world. I don't have my parents to do, all the laundry and cook everything and like do all my stuff for me. So now I need to figure out things on my own, and I'm bad at it.
Awesome. It's kind of funny that you said that you see your characters as being opposites, because the next thing I want to talk to almost points you in the opposite direction of that.
Okay.
So prior to this session or the stream, I sent a questionnaire to each of them, and so one of the things is that in this fantasy school academy, like a lot of others, there are academy houses, and so I don't have a magic hat. So what I did instead is I did basically my own personality test with some different answers, and different. Each answer would represent something that someone from that house would tend to answer.
Right.
And so the 4 houses are House Clauda, House Aquinas, House Asteria, and House Serapis. You know, once again, if we were playing this for real, there would be a lot of lore and history about what each of these represent and yada yada yada. But just to speed things up, I had them answer 9 questions, and it was intentionally made 9 because I didn't want any ties, because then I wouldn't have to deal with like, well, this person has the same number as these 2. How do we decide that? So I made it in a way that was impossible to have a tie. And so both of you did a test or answered the questionnaire. Jill, you had 2 points in Clauda, 2 in Aquinas, none in Serapis, and a whopping 5 in Asteria.
I can't wait to see what my house is, like what that means.
Well, you probably won't get much because, like I said, I didn't flesh it out for this. but you know, I can tell you some stuff about it maybe after the stream or something, or ideas I have. But I don't have anything super concrete, but I have some ideas. Okay. And Katie, you had 2s all across the board, except for House Asteria, which you had 3. So even though your 2 characters are supposed to be opposites, you are both in the same house.
What's the name of the house?
The name of the house is Asteria, so Asteria.
Cute. I like that we're in the same house.
With the way that we described our characters, because you described your character as maybe like kind of like just being sort of like really strong in this one way of knowing how to do things, and I'm describing my character as being like very flexible and versatile. And so if you had like most of your answers in one house and mine were like kind of spattered around, then that makes sense. That's funny.
All right. Also, I was mentioning earlier to them that if this game were being played for real right now, there would be more players involved, and it would be obviously NPCs. So I went and made up 8 other characters. 4 of them are pretend players, and 4 of them are real NPCs, I suppose. They're not pretend NPCs. So as players go, we have our friends who are not really here. Neil, Jacelyn, Kate, and Pete. So those are the names of the players. And the names of the NPCs. Yeah, theoretical. So they are names that I completely made up top of my head. And the NPCs that will be involved in this are Maximus, Chantal, Blaze, and Rhapsody. And so you don't have to remember these names, but like when things happen with them, it'll come up and it'll make sense. So we've kind of started doing the character creation. We know your base information. You know right now what house you were accepted in when you got your letter of acceptance for the academy. But we're going to put that on hold for a second, and then now we're going to kind of switch to going through the rules together and explaining some of the things of how this is going to work. So it's going to get a little technical. So at any point, if you have questions, or you can ask me, and that includes people in the chat once again. So if anyone has questions or wants clarification, please just jump in and let me know. So, I just wanted to mention, if you were coming to this game and you had really no idea what you wanted to play, I put in an option there that you can just have me pick for you or randomly create a character, because I kind of like the idea of like you don't choose what you're born as. So it's like, here's what you start off with, but then you can take that and try to make it what you want with what's been given to you, right? So because like the way the leveling up in classes and stuff work in this, it's much more open and flexible than how it is in the player's handbook, because you can have abilities and things that typically would not go with that class and really make your own character as you want to play it, kind of thing. But with that said, so the Valor Academy. So that is the name of the school. And I'm just going to read a little blurb here I wrote, just to set the mood. So welcome to the Valor Academy. During the next 4 years of study, we will help you reach your full potential as a citizen of Gallia. That's the name of the country you live in. Become a respectable adventurer and maybe someday a hero of the realm. While attending the academy, you will be required to choose a major and a minor class of study. It is our belief that the academy that a good adventurer is a well-rounded adventurer. Thus, by the end of your studies, you should be certified as both a third-level adventurer in one primary class and a first-level adventurer in a secondary. Alternatively, you may choose to double major, although you still are required to choose a primary and a secondary class. This route will enable you to graduate as a certified second-level adventurer in both. The Valor Academy houses. So I've kind of already mentioned, but the idea is that there are 4 houses, and the school was originally founded by a group of adventurers. There were 5. One of them became kind of like the head of the school, and the other 4 houses were named after the other 4 adventurers. So these are kind of like heroes of legends, like their stories have been passed down through the ages, and they're very, very old at this point, kind of thing. This happened like, hundreds, if not thousands of years ago. And that's the kind of stuff that I haven't 100% like pinpointed yet. But the important thing is that once were super great adventurers, they did something amazing. They formed this school, and then things go from there. So this is for me, and any of this can be altered to fit anyone's needs. But all of the classes that is currently available on D&D Beyond is what I'm using as basically a benchmark. So it's not limited to the PHB. So any other additional material that is licensed material, I'll accept. If I were running a game like this again, I might be open to some homebrew stuff, but I would recommend that you don't, just because there's a lot already being homebrewed in this already, that adding other people's homebrew to my homebrew might just make things really complicated to keep track of. And sometimes it's the more simpler approach is better. Then you can really get to play that character really well if you go with something simple. But basically, yeah, anything you want to choose from that's on the D&D Beyond is a-okay. So the way this is going to work is that you are going to school for 4 years, and every year is divided into 4 parts. So you have a spring semester, a winter break, a fall semester. My months are all backwards in my head. So it's fall semester, winter break, spring semester, summer break. And during each of these semesters, you're going to have X amount of classes you can take, and you're also going to have X amount of free slots that you can spend doing activities outside of class. And we'll get to that a little bit as well. The next thing it says is studies and their DC. So just because you take a class does not mean that you automatically get the thing you try to get. So you have to roll for these. Luckily, if you are studying something that is within your class, your primary class, and by that I mean, so let's say you are picking a fighter and you want to learn how to use simple weapons, right? You want to, well, that is something that in the PHB fighter would get, right? So it is within your wheelhouse. So in order to pass that class, you would have to roll a skill check that matches with that class and beat a DC of 5. What I should have mentioned, I guess, before all of this is I didn't talk about stats, but when you make your character, everyone starts with 10 all across the board. So you don't roll for stats in this game. Everyone starts at 10, and based on how your schooling is going to go, your stats are either going to increase or decrease. And that's why I was kind of mentioning at some point, I don't know if this was before the stream, but even though you guys are level 4, your stats are more than likely going to be kind of middling at first, because I want people to have room to grow and get better in ways outside of your regular leveling up. So, I can, as a DM, do things like you found this really cool treasure and it's a potion of intelligence. You drink this potion, you gain a point in intelligence. Or you accomplished this thing and in exchange they offered you training and now your strength is up or something. So it gives room to grow by having your stats being a little bit lower at the beginning. Yes, so when you try to pass a subject or a course, if it's something that is within your primary class, the DC is 5. If it is in your secondary class, the DC is 10. And if it's outside of your wheelhouse, the DC is 15. So it is possible for you to learn something outside of your class choices, but it's going to be difficult because you technically weren't set up to learn that stuff. So there are 3 categories of class types. So sorry, 3 categories of course types. I may have to make sure I say that so that I don't confuse things more than they already are. So if you look at your school curriculums, they're listed there as well for you guys. So you've got skills and saving throws. The second one is tools and languages. And your third is weapons and armor. So when you start out in your first year, you're going to have those 3 types of classes. So for each of those categories, you can pick one thing you want to learn from those classes and choose that as a course, right? Later on, you'll notice that you get electives. So which means that like you'll only have to take skills and saving throws as an obligatory thing in like 3rd year. And then the other 2, you can pick which other class or course you want to pick from whatever category you want. So you could have a semester where all you're learning are skills and saving throws, if that makes sense.
That's interesting. So in the end, could you have more saving throws than like a normal character would?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, you could have a character that's like, I focused on saving throws. Like I'm a very defensive person, so I really wanted to make sure that I could protect myself, and I took classes specifically so that I'd be good at saving throws.
That's really interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
And so if you took like a strength saving throw class, you could take another strength saving throw class after that and increase it again? Or
I would say that I would not allow that. So it's kind of like, would be kind of like the equivalent of like, if you took English 101, right? And then you took English 101 again, you're not going to get better at English. You're still just going to go over the same.
So there's no like English 201.
No, so you can't double up. There are like certain what's the word? Feats and things like that will allow for stuff like that. That's different. But as a basic, no, you can't like, oh, I spent like 5 classes in so now I have like a plus 18 to my, dex saving throw. Like, no. So you can only take everything once. You've got a kitty at your door.
You want to say,
release me. Release me.
In the personality question was ask if you wanted a pet, so that is your cat. But you also didn't want a cat, so that's why you tossed it out. Okay. Yes, so like I said, the 3 are course options, or the main category of courses are skills and saving throws, tools and languages, and armor and weapons. And so just to kind of go quickly over each of those, some are fairly straightforward and some are a little more in-depth. So for skills and saving throws, you have all of the things that you would find on your character sheet. So such as your athletics, your acrobatics, your sleight of hand, all of that. Now, if you look at the document that I shared with you, you'll notice that some have asterisks next to them. What that means is that in order for you to be able to attempt those skills checks, you must be proficient. So anyone, even though they're not proficient, for example, could do a deception, right? You could try to deceive someone, or you can try to perceive something. That's not a problem. Anyone can do that. But for example, animal handling, unless you're trained to work with animals, like you can't just kind of like do an animal handling check. Another one is that medicine. Unless you're like trained in medicine, you can't really do a medicine check. And I know, like, I've talked to some people, and it's like, well, you could kind of sort of guess, and it's true. But a lot of times, when it comes to stuff like that, people a lot of times do more harm than good if they don't know what they're doing. And I think, like, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think like that's one of those things that like you learn in first aid school, right? It's like, if you don't know what you're doing, don't do it, because you might do more harm than good. And so that's the kind of approach that I'm going with this, where it's like certain things it makes sense that anyone could do, but other things require you to have studied these things to really be able to do them. But on the counter of that is that later on we can talk about it, but I've made certain skill checks matter more, because I found that like certain checks haven't really been getting a lot of love, and they don't tend to get used a lot because they kind of like, well, that's not super important, we barely do that, right? But I've like added things to them to make them more important and more interesting in picking some of those things, right? Which we'll get to later. Okay. So yes, and so basically skills and saving throws is straightforward. Like I said, it's the list of things that you would find on your sheet, including the saving throws, which is straightforward. So any one of those that you can pick, that would be considered a course for that semester.
So history, or like, and you could take a class in intimidation.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that could be your class. I'm going to take an intimidation class, and then the idea is that you study ways of how to be intimidating, whether that is using like your physical presence or psychologically, affecting people. You're really going to the idea of like how to be really good at being intimidating, and I'd like to think that it's like not just about being scary, but like knowing how to read people and knowing what will work for them to really affect them.
Sure.
Tools and languages. So if you look, basically anything that is like a kit of some sort, so like an alchemist supply kit, brewer's supplies, thieves' tools, tinkerer's tools, things like that are tools that you can be proficient in. What's interesting with these is that, and I'm getting a little ahead of myself, but during school, you have options of working part-time jobs, right? So one of the ways to make sure that you earn more money during these part-time jobs is if you have a skill in one of these, right? Mm-hmm. So you can do untrade work, which will pay you very little. But let's say, for example, Jill, you learned, let's say, jeweler's tools, right? So maybe there is like a jewelry shop there that will offer you part-time work to help out because they know you are trained in jeweler's tools and you can do some things. So then that allows you to earn more while you're working your part-time job and going to school.
So when we need proficiency in something, where are we getting the proficiency from? Is that from our class, not our courses, but our class and our family background?
No. So all of your proficiencies, all of your knowledge that you will gain will be gained from your courses.
Okay, perfect.
So, you're coming in like a blank slate. You don't know anything.
So right? When you're saying like in the game, if you wanted to do an Arcana check, you would have to be proficient in Arcana because you took the course in Arcana.
Exactly.
I see. Okay.
So, and then do you become proficient in everything that you take a course in?
If you pass.
You pass. Yeah.
Right. Everything you take as a course and pass, you then become proficient in. There's some exceptions, and it'll come up because with weapons and stuff, I've added a tweak in there. But for skills, yes. So you pass your, let's go back to skills and throws. You take sleight of hand course. You pass sleight of hand. You are now proficient in sleight of hand, regardless of whether you are a fighter, a rogue, a cleric, whatever. But the DC to hit will be harder depending what your class is, because as I don't think fighters, for instance, have sleight of hand as a thing they can have by default. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So yes, so those tools, that's part of your tools and languages course. You can learn either a tool, or you can learn a musical instrument, that's part of tools, or you can learn a language. Now, once again, by default, everyone only speaks common. So whether you are a dwarf or a dragonborn or whatever, the only language you know when you start off is common. Now, the reason that is why, like, a dragonborn wouldn't know Draconic is I envision it a little bit like if the place where you're starting is basically like Western European, what's the word, colonized place. You know, it's like everyone there is basically human and speaks English, which is common, right?
Yeah.
So it's possible.
Because, like, I'm French by descent, but I had to go to French immersion to learn French.
Right. Well, an example I was going to give is like you might be of Korean descent, right? And your grandparents, when they first came to Canada, like they spoke Korean, and then they might have passed on some to your parents. But by the time it gets to you, like you haven't been really learning. You know a couple of words. You can kind of maybe say a few things with your grandpa and grandma and stuff like that. But really, like you don't speak Korean, right? And that's the kind of the idea that like the world where you're set in, the empire where you're in, everyone's kind of like converted to that. But because let's say for you, Jill, you are of Dragonborn descent.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to learn Dragonborn, it's going to be easier for you because of those family ties, and you do have a little bit of that in your history.
And
will
all
facilitate.
my older siblings can talk it, and my parents are
Sure.
like, you gotta take Dragonborn when you get to school because I'm sick and tired of you not talking it at home.
Right, or it might be the opposite, like we don't want you to know what we're saying behind your back, so...
They love me!
So if you look at languages, you have what are considered common languages for the Empire, so your Dwarvish, your Elvish, your Giant, your Gnomish, and your Halfling. And everything else is considered an exotic language, so it's rarer to be spoken within the Empire. And then you have everything else, so Abyssal, Celestial, Deep Speech, Draconic. A couple of things that I've added in are stuff like the Thieves' Cant, and there's also a thing for Druidic. I forget what it's called. Yeah, it's just Druidic. And I've also added sign language because I thought that would be fun if you could speak sign language and somebody else speaks sign language. And finally is your third category of courses is your armor and weapons. So the way this works is your armor and your weapons work a little bit differently than your skills as far as proficiencies go. Some have more than one level of type of proficiency.
Okay.
So when it comes to armor, if you are untrained with an armor set, you can't wear that armor. You can't put it on. You don't know how to put it on. It's too complicated. You're not used to wearing it or using it, so you're just not allowed.
Buckles go.
Exactly. And I know for some it might be like chainmail, you just slip it on, but like for other types of armors, like it's way more complicated, and donning and doffing is a huge thing.
Mm-hmm.
Moving around effectively with it on is another thing too. Like you kind of.
Well, that's the thing, right? It's not just putting it on; it's how you then use it once it's on you, right?
Anyone can hold a sword too, right? But being able to.
Yeah,
use it
and exactly. We'll get to that too. So once you take your first course in a armor type, so whether it's medium armor, light armor, or whatever, you can then don that armor. So that is what you call trained. Okay. So once you are trained with that armor, you can wear armor from this category. And you know how you're asking if you can take the same thing twice? Armor is a little bit different because once you've trained with armor, you can take another course with that armor to become proficient in that armor.
Okay.
And what happens is that when you are proficient with that armor, instead of adding, what it is you may add your proficiency modifier to your AC. This applies to one specific armor type, not the entire category. Okay. So what that means is that let's say you take light armor, and so you become trained in light armor. You can wear any type of light armor, but you become proficient in studded leather, right? Which means if you wear studded leather armor, you can add your proficiency bonus to your AC, making your AC even higher.
In addition to whatever the armor would normally give you. Yeah.
Right.
That's
Cool.
really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's say
Have you ever heard of the game Roll for Shoes?
no.
Oh, okay. You'll have to look it up after. It's just
Sure.
a game where you start with absolutely nothing, and then every time you try to do anything, you have to roll for it. So, like,
Okay.
you're basically, like, you're basically naked. You have to roll to see if you're wearing shoes. And it's a very interesting game. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, what's the a little asterisk, a little note, I guess. I'm sure there are things that I will have come up with that like have been done with in other games, and that's totally cool. Like I don't think I'm like the most creative person in the world, and I'm sure a lot of ideas I'm coming with have been thought of by other people before.
No, I think it's really cool.
but
I wasn't trying to say this game's exactly like it.
No.
When you were saying
No, I'm just
that one thing, it reminded me, because when you level up and roll for shoes, you have to like specialize really like very ridiculously specifically. That's
Sure.
It's really funny. Whereas this makes
Right.
a lot of sense and is very good.
Sure.
Choose-
No, I'm just saying if somebody in the chat is like, "Oh, that's actually like blah blah blah," like that's quite possible. I'm not claiming to have like invented things that like people have probably not thought of before.
Impossible to divorce your experience,
Mm-hmm.
like your creativity, right? Like that's just all
Sure.
what it's based on. So.
So-
Philip says good game design is more important than original game design. Which I
Well, there you go.
Mm-hmm.
Good.
Yeah.
It's you can tell it's not so much what you're saying as how you are saying it. So like when you're telling a story, like somebody was saying, it's like My Hero Academia is just X-Men, but it's said differently, right?
Yeah.
So that's the armor. So untrained, you can't wear the armor. Once you've taken a course in that armor category, you then become trained in that armor type. So let's say, once again, light armor, you can wear any kind of light armor once you're trained in light armor. That's basically what the game would originally call proficient in light armor, right? Once you become proficient in a specific type of armor, so once again, let's say studded leather, then anytime you wear studded leather, you gain your proficiency bonus adds to your AC.
That's awesome.
Okay. Now shields are similar as well. Untrained, you can't use shields. It's not something you're trained to use. Trained is you receive your shields +2 AC bonus. So like whatever your basic shield is you get +2 like a shield does. You can use shield and you use it as a regular shield. Once you're proficient with shields, at that point, instead of the +2 that the shield would typically give you, you use your proficiency bonus instead. So at the beginning, it's the same thing. You still get a +2, but as you level up, that's going to go up.
Mm-hmm.
That's cool.
Yeah. And then not to get ahead of things, every character is going to have 2 ACs in this game. And that's why like it's important to have a really high AC in this, because I'm compensating for something else. But we'll get to that later.
Yeah.
Okay.
Really interesting thing that I never considered about adding your proficiency bonus to something like the way you're doing here is that naturally gets better as your character levels up. So that's cool.
Yeah, because your shield might still be the same kind of shield, but you've got better at using it. So, yeah.
Cool.
Okay. Weapons, once again, same thing. So, well, it's slightly different. If you're untrained with a weapon and you are using it, by default, it is considered a, improvised weapon.
Right.
So if it's a long sword, a halberd, a dagger, it doesn't matter. If you use that weapon and you are untrained, it will be considered for you I just said the word, improvised weapon.
Yeah.
And regardless of what it is, it's going to do 1d4 of damage. Now, the type of damage will determine based on weapon. So if it's a slashing, you'll do slashing damage, you'll do piercing, and you'll bludgeoning. That's normal. But it doesn't matter what you're using, it's a d4. Because you're just not able to use that weapon the way it's meant to be used. Unless I guess it's a dagger, because that's same damage. But I was like debating making it less, but that's what the rule book says was a d4. And I was like, well, I don't know how to stab with this dagger, but it does the same thing, so who cares?
Yeah. It's pretty straightforward.
Yeah. If you are trained with a weapon, once again, this is the weapon type, you will be able to use the weapon as normal. So like if you're traded in simple weapons, you can use, if you're trained in simple weapons, you can use simple weapons. If you're trained in heavy weapons, you can use heavy weapons. No problem. Just like you would with the regular D&D. If you are proficient with a weapon, and this is specifically a weapon type, so if you want to choose long swords to be your proficiency, and let's say you're proficient with longsword, what we'll do is when you're proficient with a weapon, one may add their proficiency modifier to their attack roll. This applies to one specific weapon type, not the entire category. Right. So what that means, and I just want to make sure I have this right. Right. And that says attack roll, but that should say damage roll to make this clear. Because when you are proficient with a weapon, you already get that like the bonus to your attack. So you use your proficiency when you attack. If you are proficient in my game, you add your proficiency bonus to the damage as well. Ooh. Because in regular D&D, you just add the stat, right? So if it's strength base, you add strength. If it's dexterity, you add dex. But in this one, you do extra damage because you know how to hit precisely to cause
more pain.
The most damage possible.
Will it be you add dex or strength and your proficiency, or just your proficiency?
So you'd be the same roll as if you are using to attack, but you're using the same to like 2 bonuses for damage.
Does that apply to spells too?
Well, this is specifically for weapons, what I'm talking about here, right? So if you are trained in weapons when you're fighting with a weapon and you're proficient in that weapon, you can add that to your damage as well. Spells, put a little note for that, and we'll get back to that later, because that's something I don't think I've considered, and that could be something that could be added.
Right.
Philip says, skill can compensate for a lack of strength, but you're better to have both.
So if you look at your calendar, your school curriculum, you'll notice that you have 3 classes or 3 courses and 3 free slots, right? So you could do a variety of different things during your free time. So that's the thing we're going to cover next. So you have off-hour activities. So school life can be very demanding, but it's important that our students find the time for themselves. There are multiple ways to spend free time. Join a committee, work a part-time job, or simply relax after a long day in class. Note each player receives 3 free time slots each term. So things you can do. Working during the school year. So while it's acceptable for you to work a part-time job during your academic studies, the Academy does not encourage such activities as it may detract from your schooling experience. Also, it should be noted that no student is permitted to do so during their first year of study. And all students under the age of 16 must have parental consent before doing so starting in year 2. Note, while working in a part-time job, and this is important, roles are done at disadvantage. Pay scale is as such, and then it tells you how much you earn. So the idea is that you have 3 courses every term, right? And you have 3 free slots. So one of your slots could be used to do a part-time job, right? And you can even use all 3 of those slots for part-time work. If that's all you want to do with your free time is work your part-time job, you can do that too. But for every every part-time job you work, or every amount of slot of part-time job you work, an equivalent course will suffer because of it, because you are splitting yourself thin. You're doing schoolwork and you're working. You're not as focused on your class. So what that translates to is that when you go to roll for a class, which will be of my choosing, you will have to roll that at disadvantage. So it makes it harder for you to pass your course because your tired from working your job.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have as much time to study and blah, 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 blah. Counter to that, one of the things is you can hire a tutor. So if you really want to pass a class, what you can do is you can hire a tutor for a slot. And it's like, it's this particular one, I want to be really sure to pass it. You can hire a tutor for to help you with the class. And once again, you can do the same thing with tutors that you do with your part-time. If you want to use up all your 3 slots for tutelage, you can. And then that term, every class you're going to go for will be rolled at advantage, right? So the catch though is that it costs money to hire a tutor. And the big thing that I didn't go over so far, and I'll come back to it later, is that there are student loans in this game. And at the end of the 4 years of university, you will owe the crown a debt.
So does your tutor costs go into that?
Yes,
So
you don't have to.
Okay,
You
so
do
you
not have to
could
pay
kind of
upfront.
you could have a
Elementary school, I'm going to get a job that makes me so much money that I'll be able to pay it off in like a year. So I'm not.
The idea is that the part-time jobs you will work, if you choose to work, will give you starting funds at the beginning of the adventuring.
Okay.
Because the amount that you're going to be getting working, unfortunately, will be nowhere near as much as what you are going to be paying to go to school. But if you want to get tutelage and have an extra chance at passing courses, you can add extra money to your student loan debt.
I thought this was a fantasy game. It's too real. It's too real.
It's secretly a horror game.
Yeah,
yeah.
Thing in D&D is I just really want some student loans.
When can I get a mortgage?
Exactly. And the idea is once you start going into adventuring, part of the thing is you want to pay off that debt.
Yeah.
Luckily, the Crown is very generous, and they give you 3 whole months of interest relief for you. You have to find a job.
I thought you were gonna say you have 3 whole months to pay it off, and I was like,
No. No, they don't want you to pay it off fast. They charge interest.
Right, exactly. Right. Okay.
Which we'll talk about.
Okay.
Okay. So you can hire a tutor. It costs money, but that will allow you to roll at advantage. So in theory, you could work a part-time job and have something at disadvantage, and then also hire a tutor and bring you back to normal if you wanted to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Another option is once you've passed a course, you have the option of being a tutor to someone else. As long as it's a skill that you have that you've passed and someone else hasn't, you can help them pass that course. Okay. And that can apply to just in-story NPC, or it could be for another player. So if, like, let's say, Jill, you are proficient in Thieves' Cant, and Katie wants to learn Thieves' Cant in another semester, you could tutor Katie to pass Thieves' Cant better. So you could do that if you wanted.
Okay. And you get money for doing this?
Yes, and you get paid to tutor. It's the same as doing a part-time job. With the exception that it does not count towards one of your slots. But we'll get to that later. There are also social clubs. So in the social club, there are 5 specific clubs that you can join as extracurricular activity. There's the Valor Academy concert band. So if you want to play music, you can do that. You can join the Valor Academy Actors Guild. So there is like a theater group that you can join and do plays and things and monologues and different things like that for the school. You have what's called the Valor Academy Siege League, and Siege is my fantasy sport that I came up with for this game, and it simulates basically like a capture the fort kind of game where like you have a defending army and an attacking army, and in this you actually fight each other with like the skills you have, but the teachers are there to have magic basically applied to the stadium you're fighting in, so that no one will die. So basically these runes are set up so you get knocked out then the nurses and the doctors come and get you, and they heal you, and they put you on the sidelines. It's not intended to be like a violent thing, but you obviously use whatever your tactics to get to your goal of capturing the base
kind of thing. Like you are technically fighting, but you're not like mad.
What level
Exactly.
do we get power word kill?
In sports, it would be power word score. So
Yeah.
That's cute.
I cast nothing but net. No. Okay. And then there's the Valor Academy debate team. Straightforward. And finally, you have the Valor Academy student body. So you can actually be part of student body and help organize events and be part of that whole rigmarole. One thing that will be noted is you can also run for student body, like for elections, but you can also only do that once you are in third year. So once you're in third year and fourth year is usually when you run for class presidents and all that stuff. Or actually, third year is really when people get to the top of like the food chain, like the nominated positions, because once they're in fourth year, they're getting ready for their internships and the final year of graduation. So they don't have as much time to spend on those things. So third year is usually where like you have enough experience to be able to run some of these departments, but you're not so busy that you don't have the time to do it. And so those are things that you can do during your free slots. And what happens is whenever you do any of those activities, you will do different types of checks. You're going to be checked to see how well you're doing in those clubs. And you're also going to do what are called basically character interactions with other people at the school. And those were where the role plays kind of come in. Another thing that's like, it's not listed here, but like you can just take a slot just to hang out and have fun with your friends. And that's also something you can do in your free time. And we'll kind of get... Yeah, well, yeah, you could, but we'll get into details of like what that means later.
Can you just take more classes, or can you just take 3 classes per semester?
You can only take 3 classes. For all of you keeners out there, though, there are special summer classes you can take during summer break, which we will get to later. Okay. Next thing. So winter break, you've got a short winter break. It's the idea is you go back to see your family for the holidays. You are allowed to stay at school in the dorms if you want to, but if you are underage, you have to get your parents' permission to stay. And then there are events that will happen for like the time of the break for those students who don't go home or can't go home or whatever the reason may be.
So should we do some of this stuff we've just spoken of, like try and get our classes sorted out and then we can move on to the next thing once we've figured it out? Or
sure,
kind of apply what we've just spoken about?
Let me see how much there's left. Let me kind of just speed through the rest. It's 8:38. Give me till like 8:50, and then after that we'll jump in, because I want to make sure that like some of the information down at the bottom doesn't affect some of the choices you might want to make.
Okay.
But yeah, once it's 8:50, if we're still going through this, we'll just start rolling some things.
Okay.
Play the buzzer at 8:50. Like, meh.
Yeah. Because the next thing is the I scrolled down too far. So winter break is winter break. You go away for 2 weeks, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Some things can happen. Summer break is longer than the winter break, and so some of the things you can do, other than the things you're already doing during school year, is that you can attend summer workshops. And summer workshops is actually where, mechanically speaking, you can learn things like feats. So every summer there will be randomly basically guest lecturers that'll come, like adventurers that are out in the field doing the job, come in and offer their time to do workshops for students. So there'll be like a set amount of feats offered during those summer school programs, and then you can take those classes at a cost and try to learn that feat, basically. Those are the summer school programs. You can work a summer job. So once again, you work in your part-time job. It's just you're working it more because you've got the free time. And you can just enjoy yourself. Once again, there are like activities, that social activities that will happen that you can do, which you'll roll different things and you'll RP different things and have different types of results.
Cool.
Internships is what you do in your 4th year. Instead of your spring semester, you only have a fall semester. You have your winter break. When you come back, you're going on an internship. So the idea is that at that point, you're going out with a group of adventurers who are seasoned, and you're tagging along like an apprentice. And that's where you see if you have what it takes to be on the field, but in a safe environment because you have people there to protect you.
Philip in the chat says, so instead of taking a character class, you customize your abilities by choosing your courses?
Absolutely. That's 100% it. Yeah.
Right. But the caveat to that is you do choose a primary and secondary class, and those choices make certain courses easier for you to do well in.
Yes.
Philip showed up a little bit later after we were talking about that primary secondary class distinction.
Oh, okay. Sure. Yeah. So that's 100% it. Yeah. So you're going to choose a primary and a secondary class, but by default, it doesn't determine what your abilities are. It just determines how easily you can attain those abilities. So if it's within what would be typically in your class description, those courses are easier to pass for you than things that are outside of that. But you can still pick things that are outside of those if you want to. But I would say that if you're finding yourself picking a class but like choosing abilities from something completely different all the time, it might be worth it for you just to pick that class instead.
Makes sense.
Idea,
Philip. I like it.
And finally, yeah, if you need to answer questions, by the way, let me know and just say, oh, by the way, I just want to answer this, and I'll stop talking.
Typing sometimes too. Like if you're talking and I want to say something, then I just type it.
Cool. So fun thing before the bad thing is that there's also an underlying thing that we're going to be keeping track of, is that the school does offer bursaries to its students when they graduate. So the idea is that there is a bursary for every house. If you are the top student in that house when you the graduating year, you receive a bursary. If you are, and the one student who is the top grade overall gets an extra bursary. And the way we calculate that is based on how well you do in your courses, like how many you fail, how many you pass, and how well you do on your internship, which is basically an exam.
Right.
And so what your total score at the end of your 4 years is tabulated. And whoever is the highest ranking student in your house, and each of the 4 houses gets a bursary, and whoever is the overall top student gets a bigger bursary.
So that's where like having 8 players really comes in handy, because then it's kind of like there's a lot more competition and like, yeah.
Well, there's going to be competition because you and I are in the same house.
Well, my character's not meant to be good at school, so you're going to get it. Don't worry. This character's meant to be, like, she's meant to be kind of like a bumbly sidekick kind of a person.
Cool.
Yeah.
Setting realistic goals. I like it.
Yeah.
Okay. And finally, well, we can't avoid it. We need to talk about tuition. So the cost of attending the Valor Academy is 1,200 gold per semester.
Oh my god.
Accumulating to a total of 9,600 gold pieces for the entire 4 years. That is assuming you don't get any tutors or anything else. So 9,600 gold is what you're going to owe at the end. Students will have 3 months of relief before they are required to begin repayment, including interest accrued at a rate of 3.5% annually.
Reason 3.5% just cracks me up. Like, why didn't you choose 3.6?
Because I did the math and it made it for a round number that I liked. Yeah.
Well,
But
then
yes.
that makes sense. But in my mind, it was like 3.5 is the average current interest rate, you know,
Yeah.
for the past 3 years. Yeah. Anyway.
Well, you laugh, but like in the story, at some points, interest might go up or go down
Yeah.
depending on what's happening in the world.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, and you have 3 months. Side note, one of the things I do for my games is I do typically create a world calendar. And I get everyone to pick a birthday too, which is really fun because then we do fun things for the birthdays. But yeah, so then you'll be able to actually keep track of the months on the calendar and know when your student loan payments are due and all that good stuff.
Oh God, that's so funny.
And okay, just a few quick rule things just to go quickly over. That we talked about age. We talked about stats. Based on how you do each term, that's what's going to determine if your stats go up or down every term. And everything that you do really well will go up by 2. And everything that you not everything, but the thing that you're best at will go up by 2. Or 2 things will go up by 1 if they're kind of a tie. And your worst thing will go down by 1. So, and I'm kind of like the judge of, based on what you did that term, determine what I feel is the most adequate. So unfortunately, you don't have a choice in that. I'm kind of like giving to you based on what I feel you did that term.
Teacher.
Exactly. You're also going to develop what are called bonds with your classmates. So these are the NPCs and the PCs. And those are going to be determined based on your interactions with them under different social events. And I'll explain that to you as we are doing it, because that makes more sense.
Because you only have 3 minutes left until 8:15.
Yes. And everything else is kind of a post-graduation rule set that I have just for the game, some of my homebrew stuff. And if we have time, which I don't think we will, but if we do at the end, if we kind of want to go over some of those, we can go over some of those too. Okay, so now we are going to start actually rolling some dice and picking some things. I don't know, do you typically take a break at a certain point? Do we need to do a washroom thing? Do people need to stretch their legs? Or do we just kind of want to...
We do usually take a break halfway through, but why don't we do like our first semester planning?
Okay.
And then take a break?
Sure.
Or do you want to take a break now, Jill?
I can do either or.
I'm just popping the link to the document into the chat again, in case Philip wants to have a look.
Sure. And if Philip is really interested, if there's a way for me to send documentation to him afterwards, I would gladly be able to do that too if he wants to look at some things.
Yeah, are you in the Discord, Philip? Are you on our Discord?
You'll have to share a link to the Discord as well.
Yeah.
And if you're watching this on YouTube, we have a link to our Discord down in the description below.
Cool. All right,
Okay.
so I don't know where we fell on the break thing. I got
Do
distracted.
we want to just do the first semester?
Yeah.
I want to like
Okay.
do. Yeah.
So, what you're going to have to do in the first term is we're going to choose all the things you're going to be doing that term, and then we're going to roll for results.
Cool.
Because what you choose to do may affect how we roll, right? So each of you need to pick from the list of the document I gave you something in skills and saving throws, something from the tools and languages, and something from... Oh, by the way, sorry. Before that, I'm kind of getting ahead of myself. In year 1, you pick... The first thing you need to do is choose your class.
Right.
So...
I'm going to go with Paladin.
Cool. That's your primary.
Yeah, as my
Yes.
primary.
So the class you pick in year 1 is your primary class.
Oh, and then we pick one in year 2 as our secondary?
Yeah.
Okay, let's see. Wouldn't it be funny to be a Centaur monk?
Pow, 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 pow. So many
So I get
kicks.
I
Extra.
think that would be cool because, like, you'd be able to do, like, rear kicking as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You're choosing paladin. I want to do monk. I'm going to pick monk.
Okay. So, your Jill is a paladin, and Katie is a monk. So, this is where like we're gonna have to like work a little bit together because I don't know everything top of my head, and it might require us to like do a little digging.
Mm-hmm.
But so, what I want you to do for your first term is you're going to pick something you want to learn from the skills and saving throws, something you want to learn from tools and languages, and something you want to learn from weapons and armor. Now, like I said, if it falls within the paladin build, things that you could choose as those options in paladin, then the target's going to be 5. If not, then it's going to be 15 because there's no secondary class yet. That's why you can't.
So don't do that.
That makes sense. Okay.
Right.
Wait till later.
Right. So the idea is that they really want you to focus on your primary in the first year. That's why you can't do a secondary level role because you don't have a secondary yet.
Okay.
It's kind of a way to try to like, in my head, it's kind of like the idea of like, if you go to art school, like learn to draw your basic shapes first before you start doing more advanced drawing or something. Yeah.
Monk. I don't normally wear armor. So I kind of don't ever need to take an armor course if I want to just lean into that and have my secondary class be something that also doesn't really care about armor.
You could. Or you could get something that does wear armor so that you could wear armor as a monk.
So for tools, I don't do... Okay, so as a paladin, I have none under tools. So
right now, you're definitely not choosing a tool. Maybe later on, once you pick your secondary, you might want to choose a tool proficiency, right?
Because I didn't want to take any languages at all for this character because I didn't want her to be, like, fluent in anything except for common.
Okay.
Oh, so what else could you pick if you're not choosing...
It's either tools or languages. So I would just have to choose a tool and see what happens.
Exactly.
You could choose a language and it would just be really hard, and that might make sense. Like maybe you happen to learn it, but it's...
No, but I didn't want my character to learn any languages, like as a preference for myself. Like I didn't want her to have any.
She wants to be completely unilingual.
Yeah. Can you intentionally tank a course?
Or I could just take a tool course and see if I get it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
which is what I'm going to do.
Rather like happen to get something. You'd rather happen to get tools than a language, is what you're saying, right?
Yeah. Like I don't want to ever take a language course. Like she's going to be avoiding language courses.
Sure. But that's something that like right off the bat we might be like, well, based on what we look at when we look at classes, not enough classes by default have tool proficiencies, right? And so maybe making it that like the 5, 10, 15 for these might be too strict because like 80% of these will be a 15 or higher roll, right? And so maybe we need to like just make it a 5, 10 thing instead, so that like if it's something your class gets, it's a 5, and if it's something your class doesn't get, it's a 10. Because
I think usually, and I could be wrong, but often the tool proficiencies in languages come from your background versus
but that's something else, right? Yes, sorry. Thank you. Because that's also something else you should be looking at too, right? You guys both chose a background.
So that does matter.
Yes.
Okay.
So the reason why you chose a family background, like an official background originally, you had Urchin and you had
Outlander.
Right. Is those will allow you to learn things as well.
Okay.
Right. So if in your background it says, like, say you have a certain tool proficiency, that counts as being in your wheelhouse, and then you were...
Need to find where's background.
Okay.
With Outlander, it says language is one of your choice. Does that mean I could choose any language and have it count as being in my wheelhouse?
If in your Outlander it doesn't specify a language and it's just a language, then yes. What I would say is that you could choose a language that you could consider being your background language, and you would then roll that language at that appropriate difficulty level. Right. And also consider that, like, I don't think there's necessarily a language for centaurs, but I'd have to double check if they have one. But like,
there might be one listed in like the Theros book or something.
Right. So once again, look for Jill though. If if it wasn't for the fact that Jill doesn't want to speak any other language than Common, she could roll to learn Draconic at a easier DC because her family is Draconic, is our Dragonborn.
My character, having described her as like a MacGyver type person, will want to learn some kind of tools. So Artisans Tools or a musical instrument really is what I have to go to choose from.
I'm going to go with Thieves Tools. If that
what are the types of Artisans Tools? Where are those?
Let's see if I list them in the thing or not.
You list all the tools, but I don't know if you list...
let me bring it up.
Tools, 154.
I think Artisan Tool I broke down into the tools category.
So these special tools include the items needed to pursue a craft or trade. The table shows examples of the most common types. So it's alchemist supplies, brewer supplies, calligrapher supplies.
So if you look at the list on the document that I gave you, the Academy of Valor, where all the rules are, and you go to the tools and languages section, it's on... you'll see that I have them all listed: alchemist supplies, brewer supplies, calligrapher supplies, carpenter's tools.
Can you guys hear Neil yelling?
No.
He's running a game.
No, we can't hear him.
Doing it very loudly. Sorry.
It's right under...
Did you leave any out from the book?
It shouldn't. Okay. I should have broke them all up for you already. So it's right underneath the section that talks about the DC difficulties.
You know what PDF that is?
What page?
Yeah. Oh, I see it.
It's on the third page.
For armor and weapons, is that like I would take either armor or weapons as a class? For a paladin, it says all armor.
Yes.
So would I just have a class that is like armor in general?
No. So you're talking about a course, right? Not a class.
Sorry. Yeah. Would I take a course that is just heavy armor then?
So what you would... Yes. So if you want to go into armor with your for the armor and weapons, you're going to start by being trained in armor. So what it says is paladin can learn any armor. So what that means is all armor is in your wheelhouse.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So for you to become trained in a category, so let's say you want to start by being trained in light armor, then you would pick light armor as a course.
So could I just take a course in heavy armor? Because I don't think I'll ever wear light armor.
Yep.
Because that would make sense, right? Like,
yeah. Because as a paladin, you are able to take... Anyone can learn heavy armor. But because you are a paladin and it is in your wheelhouse, the DC is lower. So it would be a DC of 5 for you to learn heavy armor.
Okay.
All right. I'm going to learn stealth, woodcarver's tools, and simple weapons.
Okay. And have you typed it in your, okay, so stealth, woodcarver's tools, and simple weapons for Katie.
I haven't chosen what I want to do outside of.
And Jill, you would do the same where in your, in the document where it says fall semester, you would put in the 3 things you want to roll for.
Okay. The one that I'm looking at, is that just for me? Like I can write in it and everything?
Yeah, there should be 2 tabs at the bottom. One it says Jill and one says Katie.
I don't see any tabs on mine.
It should be at the very bottom of the screen.
Oh, you know what? I think my window is like longer than the screen.
Oh.
That must be what it is. It was exactly what it was. Okay. I was like, there's no tab. Okay. I'm going to take medicine and thieves' tools from my urchin background, and then heavy armor. Ooh. Yeah.
Okay. Now, the next thing you need to decide is what are the things you want to do with your free slots. So in year 1, the options you have are as follows. You can receive tutelage, so you can be tutored, that's 1 slot. You can join a school club and partake in school club activities of your choice, whichever club you want to join in. And you can also do what are called just social activities, where you can spend just time doing fun things with classmates and getting to know people.
It's kind of tricky because it's like at the beginning you almost want to get as much out of it as you can. And since we don't have other players right now, it almost also is kind of like, well, should we focus on studies, you know?
It's up to you. But I mean, at some point, you're going to like I said, that's why I made those fake other players.
Yeah.
And so that we can show what would happen in the event of
Okay.
Those things that were to happen, right?
Okay.
But if you want to...
Networking is important, Jill. It's not what you know, it's who you know.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Well, Jill does, but Jill's character doesn't, because that was a question in the thing.
Yeah.
Getting a tutor.
Yeah, I'm getting a tutor.
I'm going to be in Siege League, and I'm going to do social activities.
Okay, so you're just going full into it. Okay, good.
Okay, maybe I'll do the same. I'll do Armor Tutor, and then I'll join you in Siege League.
We have to pick what we want the tutor for.
Yeah, mine's going to be my Armor Tutor.
I'm going to pick Weapons Tutor.
Now, I will say, and this is totally, whatever you want to do is fine, but like, for example, Jill, you already have a rolling at a very low DC for your heavy armor because of your Paladin class, right?
Yeah. Well,
so your
all
DC
of them
for
are
you...
low.
Right. Oh, okay. So none of them are higher because of something you don't know. Okay.
No. I just really don't want to screw up my armor.
Okay.
Because if I roll
totally
a natural 1, I'm going to be angry.
No, that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm just going to go back to your sheets. So Jill, you have medicine, thieves' tools, heavy armor, and in your free slots, you're going to do armor tutor, siege league, and social activity. So based on this, because you're getting tutelage, I'm going to just put in here right now for you. Well, you can put it in yourself. So it costs 100 gold to hire a tutor.
I don't think my character has a concept of money a lot, because I think all that was handled by parents and stuff.
Sure.
So I think it's very much like
the good thing with tutelage is that the more you hire in a semester, the cheaper it gets. So it's 100 for a slot, it's 160 for 2, or 200 for 3. Okay. So if you were like really want to go gung ho on like tutelage and not do anything else that term, like it's not as expensive per class if you were to just do separate. But that's a whole other can of worms. So
My mind for this semester then, because I think it's going to be pretty easy to get all of these classes. Like I don't need a tutor for any of this stuff, right?
probably not, but it helps you. Definitely, when you have higher DCs, is when you want to take advantage of this. But like Jill said, like if you were like, I'm super paranoid that I'm not going to pass heavy armor, and I want 100% for sure be as confident as I can that I'm going to get this, then it's an option. Right?
Plus, my character has a crush on the tutor.
Yeah, but I'm going to see how it goes without. But then, so would I just pick another social activity? Like I have got Siege League and then just generic social activities. So
yeah, you could do Siege League, and then the other 2 slots could just be for spending time with people and doing activities. You totally
that's
can.
what I'll.
Okay. Now, Jill, put the 100 gold in the cost/gains, and you want to put a negative. Yeah, and you'll want to put a negative because that means it costs you 100 gold.
Okay.
So, but because you're paying that, you do have a heavy armor will roll at advantage. So once we've determined what everyone does, I just want to make Katie, none of your activities affect your rolls. So what we're going to do is we're going to roll for classes now because we know what the modifiers are for your classes. Okay, so let's start with Jill. Okay.
Okay.
So Jill, you're going to roll for medicine. Now, medicine is a wisdom check, I believe. That's if you look at your skills.
Yes.
I believe the modifier is wisdom. Right now, you're at 10.
Yep.
Everything is the same,
0.
so there's no plus or minus.
Yeah.
And because it is part of your background, you said, or is it part of your class?
Class.
Then it is in your wheelhouse, so it is a DC of 5. So just roll a d20, a straight d20, and tell me if you roll 5 or higher.
18.
Good. So the outcome is you passed.
Yeah, I passed my first class.
Right, which means that you now have the medicine proficiency, which you can add to your sheet later on. So, Katie, your first class is Stealth. Stealth is based on Dex. You don't have a Dex modifier right now because everyone is at 10. What is your class again? You are... what was your class that you picked?
Monk.
Monk, okay. And is that part of the monk? Perfect. So DC 5, go ahead.
Wait. 7.
7? Yeah. It was a little harder than you thought, but you passed it. And that's all that matters. So next to Stealth, you passed.
Nice.
Okay. Jill, your next class is Thieves Tool. And I also like how you put Urchin and stuff next to it so I know where you're getting it from. So, same thing. 5 or higher.
16.
All right, you passed your Thieves Tool class. All right. Katie, you are taking Woodcarver's Tools.
DC 5 again?
It is part of your... is Woodcarver's Tool part of your background?
No,
what it is?
It allows me to choose one type of Artisans Tools or
Okay,
one
but that is,
musical.
right. So that is because of your background.
No, it's from Monk.
Oh, Monk. Okay, cool. Then yes, it is a DC of 5.
Okay. 11.
There you go. So you have passed your Woodcarver's Tools class.
This is scary. It's like that natural one is just waiting.
Well, you already burned both really good rolls.
I know, but I have advantage on my next one because of my tutor.
Okay, yes. So, things are about to get heavy because you're rolling for your heavy armor.
Okay,
and roll at advantage, 5 or better.
Oh, a 10 and a 2.
That worked out. So it's a good thing you took that tutor. Tutor really saved your bacon.
Yep.
So you have passed your heavy armor class. Course. Your heavy armor course.
Yeah.
Of course. And then Katie, for simple weapons, that is within your class. So that is a 5 or higher.
Oof, 6.
And school is hard, but
Oh my
like,
god! I thought
man,
it was gonna
you
be
passed. You passed. That's the
me.
important thing. You've just been too busy with your social activities and.
I've also
Okay.
been putting my marks in next to where I pass because I want to remember my on my report card.
Yeah. So I think I got 7 and then 11, right? And then 6. It's close. 5 would have been fine too, though, right? It's or high, 5
Yeah.
or higher, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, meets it, beats it.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So now we're going to roll for your free slots.
Mhm.
So these are things that happen during the term outside of class. So both of you have Siege League. So what I want you to do, we'll do that first since you have that in common. Let me bring up my cheat sheet. So what I want you to do, first of all, we'll get Jill to do this. Well, it's up to you. Decide who is going to roll next. Who wants to go first?
Roll to see who goes next. Roll a d20.
I got a 7.
What'd you get?
Kate?
I got 10.
Okay, you go first.
Okay. So I want you to roll 2 different things, Katie. So the first thing, I want you to roll a d10. And just for keep this in mind, Jill, you are 9. Katie, you are 10.
Okay.
So Katie, if you roll a 10, just roll again.
Okay. I got a 6.
Okay. Write that down.
Okay.
And the next thing I want you to do is roll a d20. Just a straight d20, and that's going to determine how well your time in Siege League goes. And I'll explain to you what the range of that is after.
Okay, d20, you said?
Just a straight d20.
I got an 8. I'm rolling so poorly on my d20s.
Okay, so the way this works is that every social activity comes with a few things. First of all, it is an opportunity to see how well you just do in your social activity, depending what it is. And when it's like a specific event, like a club or not one of those, like you have one where you just pick your social activity as a thing and not a specific thing to a club or a thing, things will happen randomly. Things will also happen randomly in you're just hanging out with friends, but you have some say and some control that you don't have with the club activities. So in this scenario, you rolled a 6 on your d10, right? So that points to Chantal, who is a member of Aquinas, and she is, let's see, is she in that group? Let me see, I have this somewhere here. Okay, so Chantal is not in the Siege group.
Okay.
She's an NPC from a different house, but you still had an encounter with her during Siege. Okay, so you rolled a dice from 1 to 20 to determine how well the encounter goes, right? So the way it works is that 10 to 17 is a good encounter. 18 to 20 is a great encounter. And if you roll a nat 20, it's like an amazing event happens. Less than 10 is bad. And a nat 1 is terrible. So you rolled, naturally, what did you roll? Oh, yeah, because there's no modifier. So it's a bad event. So what I need you to do is tell me, during your Siege match, you had an encounter with Chantal, and it went bad.
And she wasn't even supposed to be there.
Right. Yeah, well, she might have been in attendance.
She obviously was. Yeah.
So this is where I want you to tell me, and like I said, we don't have a lot of info about these NPCs. I would flesh them out a little bit better, and I would actually maybe role play this with you in a different scenario. But like, I want you to tell me, and this is a little bit of world building too, which is nice. Tell me what in your mind happened during siege practice one day, where somebody came over from a different class, a different house to just watch maybe one of their friends were practicing. What's the scenario that you get involved with this person and things go bad?
So, inclination is that, yeah, she was there just like watching the match or whatever. And I'm thinking that maybe my character got like carried away with what I was trying to do. Like, you know, I had the thing, the flag or the ball or whatever, and I'm running with it. And I just like completely run her over.
Trample
with
her.
it.
So maybe Chantal was a little too close to the sidelines.
Yeah. Well, no, I don't think so. I think that I'm just like way not where I'm supposed to be.
Okay. And okay, so the idea is that like during this practice, you basically ran into her and hurt her somehow.
And like bowl over this audience member,
You
and
like
it's Chantal.
galloped
Sure.
over her.
Yeah, like trample.
Right. So I will say that like because it wasn't a very bad, like a terrible incident, she didn't get hurt or anything, but she did get like scuffed and her clothes got dirty or something, and she was not happy with you because of it.
A hoof-shaped black eye.
It's like so muddy, right?
Sure. Yeah. It's a wet day, and she got tossed in the mud, and it's like no bueno.
Yeah.
So what that means is that because of this, you will now have a -1 bond with Chantal from Aquinas.
Oh no.
The way this works is that at any point in time, you can not have any lower than a -2 with anyone, and you can't have more than a +3. So +3 is the best you can be as far as a relationship goes with someone, and the -2 is the lowest you can get. And what that's going to happen is that in the event that you and another person have to do something together at some point, these modifiers are going to come into play. So, Jill, so now we're going to do your siege practice. So I want you to roll a d10.
Okay.
You are 9, so if you roll a 9, roll again.
Oh, I see. Okay. 3.
Okay. And I want you to roll a d20.
15.
Okay. So let me see. So during the same practice, we'll say, because you're both in the same house and you're both in the same sports league, so it would make sense that both of you, Kate and Jill, are practicing. So during that same practice, you had a different experience. Kate, who, oh yeah, I didn't mention who was in whose house at the beginning, so I'll say that. So Neil and Maximus are in House Claudia. Jacelyn and Chantal are in Aquinas. Kate, Blaze, Jill, and Katie are in Asteria. And Pete and Rhapsody are in Serapis. So Kate is not part of the Siege League, but is from your house. And so she decided probably to go and just watch the practice or something, and something good happened because you rolled between 10 and 17. So not great or not amazing, but it was good. So what is something good that would have happened during practice between you and Kate?
I think we made plans to hang out later, maybe play some D&D, because that seems really like what is accurate.
Okay. Make a note of that, because that will could come into play later for you. So got along well. Talked about maybe getting together to do some D&D later on.
Yeah.
So which means you now have a +1 bond with Kate. Now, Jill, you've already done your armor tutor and you've done your siege league. Now you have a social. So the difference between social and like a specific like event is that this is basically hangout time.
Mm-hmm.
And in this situation, you can choose to hang out with somebody you choose from, right? So it's perfect that you mentioned that you and Kate wanted to play D&D, because if in this situation, if Kate the player has a free slot for social picked, and you two agree to wanting to spend that time together, then both of you can use that social slot to do something together.
Aww.
Right? So in this situation, both you and Kate choose to do the activity of going out and playing D&D together. I don't know if I had like that as an option, but I'm going to read you what the options are I had as like potential like hangouts.
Okay.
So there are everyday hangouts, which like include like going to a restaurant, going to the theater, going shopping, going to the park, going to the library, and attending Siege. So you guys are like, you're in Siege League, so you probably don't care to do that. But if you were two people who weren't in Siege, you could have gone and just attended a match, right? There are events that are going to be specific to summer and winter for like the vacation. And there are also special events that will randomly happen, and I'm going to roll for them to see if those are options. And what happens with those is that if one of those special events are happening that semester, it's an additional thing you can choose from, and typically will do something extra that the others don't do. But you also risk being kind of hoodwinked into doing something else that you kind of didn't want to do. So that's the counter to that. So
1 second,
I'm
my
going.
cats are fighting. I'll be right back.
Yep.
Stop that! Sorry about that.
Oh, you're a wet trasher than I thought you would be.
Yeah, they were fighting outside my door because it's almost supper time and they get fighty when it's supper time.
Sure. So I was going to roll, but I want to do the thing that you did with Kate. So I'm just going to let that go. So what I want you to do is, once again, roll a d20. But because you have... Yeah. But because you, if you remember, you have a +1 bond with Kate now. So add a +1 to your roll.
Okay, so with the +1, that's a 16.
All right. So it falls under the good category. So tell me about your. So at this point, like if Kate were here, like for real, the other player, you and Kate would discuss together and come up with what you guys did and how it went. When you out of this, you each get a bond increase, right?
Oh wow! So I would be +2 with. When we are playing with both Kate and Kate, we usually call this Kate Cicada Kate.
Oh yeah.
So I think with Cicada, it would be like
playing D&D with right now, not me.
Right,
Yeah.
right. So I think it would be. We would probably go shopping to potentially the game store and then enjoy playing whatever game we purchased if like role-playing games isn't one of the options. So it would probably be like shopping and then hang out after.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. So you guys went and maybe got some minis or something.
Yes.
And painted your minis or whatever, and then had a fun time.
Yeah.
That's it. And now you and Kate have a +2 bond between the two of you.
Oh, I love it.
Okay. Now, Katie, you have some social stuff to do as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, for instance, both you and Jill had, before Jill went out and hung out with the other Kate, you two could have done something together because both of you would have had a free slot. But Jill chose to use that slot for something else.
Well,
so now
could
you
I
have...
have invited Kate along?
You
with
could.
us? Oh,
Yeah, so we could say that too. So if multiple
Why don't I
people...
of my, because I have 2 social activities, so why don't we say one of them is that?
Yeah, so we would definitely have invited you and been like, let's all go to the game store and have a cool hangout, and then maybe we can get shakes later.
Sweet.
Okay, so the only catch with that, and I'm asking you, is so the person who initiates the I usually get the person who initiates the hangout. So like you invited Kate. So if Kate was there and you were like, Kate, I want to invite you to do this thing, you're the one who rolls, right? So in this scenario, Jill, you're the invitee. So other Kate, this Katie, can also join, but like it would be your role. So even though there are 3 players, you're the one who rolls for everyone because you're the invitee, right? Or
so
inviter.
would my 16 have been applied to both?
Right. So everyone
15 and then 16.
Yes, but you don't get so you wouldn't get the +1 for Katie here that you got with Kate. So really you would got 16 with
Cicada.
not here, Kate. Yeah, Cicada. And then 15 with Katie.
Yeah.
And that's still +1. So now you have a +1 bond with Katie, and you have a +2 with Cicada.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
And that uses up one of Katie's socials.
But this Kate here with us now gets a +1 with me, right?
Yes.
Like it's a
so your
two-way
bond.
street.
Yeah.
Margot, since that's my character.
Yeah.
Margot.
So Margot and
Cleve.
Cleveland.
Margot and Cleve have a
+1 bond.
Cool.
Right. Where Cleve and Cicada have a +2. Okay. So that means that Margot has 1 free social slot that she may use now.
Oh,
And
would Margot also get to roll for Cicada bond? Because we all hung out together?
Oh yeah, so I get +1 bond with Cleve, but do I get +1 with Cicada Kate?
Well, let's discuss it. So
Yeah.
my only issue with that is that if you do a group activity like that, if I allow group activities, that means that everyone could get really big bonuses really fast.
Maybe you have to pick like one person that the bonus applies to, and like that's the person that you sort of bonded with the most at that event.
Sure.
So maybe
we could do that.
Maybe I wouldn't get the other +2 with Cicada, and I only get a +1 with Margot.
Or you could get +2 with Cicada and nothing with me.
Right. Alternatively, what I was thinking is that you only get the bonus with the person who invites you. So like, Jill invited both of you, so both of you had fun with Jill, but like maybe like you don't know each other super well yet. Like, Cicada and Margot don't know each other super well, so that's why like there wasn't necessarily a bond there developed. But the fact that you did hang out all 3 together gives an extra reason for later for you guys to maybe plan something together, and then you could get those bonuses.
Does Cleve get a +1 for both of us?
I think the way I would rule it is that like if you do a roll for someone, then like the person who initiated the situation can hang out with multiple people. Well, I don't know.
Just because like that's going to motivate people to be like every time they have a social activity to invite like 6 people.
Right. So I think that's what I'm going to say is like you can have other people join and they can say they hung out and did things with you guys, which then, can be part of the kind of the story building of like how you know each other and stuff you've done together in the past. But I think you have to pick who you want the bond to be with. Yeah.
I think that makes the most sense.
Yeah, because I think I would pick it to be with you because I already have a bond with Cicada. So
right.
Then I'd have 1 and 1.
Exactly. So that would mean you would have rolled 15. So you have a 1 with Cicada.
Wise, you could, if you wanted to, choose to get another +1 with Cicada.
Right.
Yeah. So you could kind of like min-max it if you wanted to.
So in that situation, let's say I invited Margot and I had Cicada with me. Would I have, and then I chose to have my bond with Cicada. So I had 2 with Cicada, 0 with Margot. Could Margot have had a bond with me?
No.
So that would have been pointless for Margot to go.
As far as stats go, yes.
Okay.
But the idea is also that, like, we're supposed to be building backstory
Mm-hmm.
for your characters so that when you guys are inevitably, by happenstance, in the same adventurers group,
Yeah.
then one of the things you'll have in common is
Right.
like, you know, you used to play D&D together in school.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that is how you guys know each other,
Right.
you know?
To be clear, I did choose one with Margot.
Yeah.
Like, just as the final ruling.
Right. I had never really intended it for more than like a one-on-one situation. And I think that's why like I hadn't really planned for group activities.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you do want to do a group thing, I think that's doable. But I think that only one of the people you hang out with has an opportunity for that bonus. But since you're also using a slot there, Margot, I think that if you're using a slot, then you should have an opportunity to gain something from it. But you have to do your own separate roll. I think that's what I'm going to say.
Wait a second. So I don't get a +1 bond with Cleve?
No, you do.
But if the situation had been like, when... Okay, wait, now I'm confused.
Okay, so for instance, let's say it's you and Cicada and Margot. Okay, you're in a 3-person group. That doesn't work. But let's say you guys were 4, and you, Jill, invite Margot and Cicada and let's say Pete, right? And you focus on your relationship with Margot. Well, Pete and Cicada aren't doing anything as far as dice rolls go. If they wanted to roll to increase their, I would allow that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, but you can't be doing it with more than one person, and it's because the idea is that this is the person you spent the most time with. Even though you're in a group and you spend time with everyone, like this is the one person that you hit it off best during
Mm-hmm.
that hangout.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Because I do think that will come up with a group of like 8 people with free slots.
Right.
I think it would be like, well, I want to go do this. And it's like, that sounds really cool. I want to do that too. So
Yeah.
I think that will be something that will come up.
You could keep it simple and just say the person who like initiated the group thing, they're the one who rolls, and then that determines like the overall feel of the event, like whether it was good or bad, and then everybody gets to choose to either add one to their bond with one of the people there or take it away if they have to lose one or whatever. If you want it simple.
Yeah. I think that like I think I'm going to leave the onus of rolling to the other people because I don't want Jill's role to affect like the relationship between 2 other characters where Jill had nothing to do with it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, because if I
have to roll because Jill was like targeting me.
Exactly. So Jill spent time with you, and Jill, because is the person who initiated the hangout, is rolling to see how your encounter went, right? Alternatively, we could get both people to roll and do the average, but I don't know if that really serves any purpose.
Well, I mean, it's up to you, but I think it makes sense for there to be just sort of like an overall feel to the event, and so like one roll could cover everybody's. But
That's true.
because everybody's using up a slot, so it's I think like either there's one roll or everybody should get to roll, right?
Well, okay, so here, hypothetically speaking, so let's say that Kate is the one who initiates the hangout, right? And all 4 of you go. And Kate rolls a 7, and like Kate chooses Pete off the bat because you have to choose before you roll, and rolls a 7, and then the relationship between Kate and Pete now is a bond of -1, right? So would you be okay with that, saying that now you and Jill have a -1 because of Kate's roll?
Well, in my mind, there's a roll, and it's like, okay, 7 for this encounter. So you need to pick one of the people from the encounter to apply the -1 to, and it could be anybody.
So you would roll and then choose who to apply it to?
And then the other 2 people would be stuck with the -1 between them 2?
Oh. I think you could... Anyway, I don't know.
I think rolling in pairs is
think
fine.
about it.
And then
Yeah.
choosing between the two of them who wants to roll the random dice machine.
Right. Yeah, because I feel like the idea of picking after rolling is kind of being like, well, if I had a good time, I want to have a good time with this person. But if it was a terrible time, I wanted to be with this person. Is kind of like, you can't really predetermine how events are going to go.
The only thing is that I don't get to roll in my social activity.
If you're not the one who initiates it, 100%. However, so if once again, same scenario, it's you, Cicada, Jill, and Pete, right? And Jill invites all four of you, and Jill wants to have the event with Kate, with Cicada. If you and Pete want to initiate a roll, you two can do that too, and then you decide between the two of you who does the roll. Does that make sense?
We should move on. We've been talking a long time about this one little roll. So I have one more social activity.
Right. So you get to pick who you want to have your social activity with, but it can't be Jill because Jill is out of slots.
Okay. Let's randomly determine it because I don't remember all the different people.
Sure. We'll say that it is with that Neil guy from Claudia. And so I'm going to roll the D20 for special events. Okay, so the choices you can do with Neil, if that's the person you want to spend time with. You can go to the restaurant, you can go to the theater, you can do some shopping, your park, library, and attend a siege match. Those are your default you can do anytime. But it just so happens that this semester, it's fall, but it's like still like early in fall, so it's still nice out. And there's a circus in town. So one of the options you could do this special event is you could attend a circus.
Absolutely. Let's go to the circus.
Okay. So what I need you to do, once again, you're the initiator of the hangout. You are going to roll a D20. Right now you have no relation with Neil, so you're at a 0. So just roll a straight D20, and we're going to determine how that goes.
Did you say natural 20?
Natural 20.
It
okay.
cut your voice out completely.
Yeah, we didn't hear it at all. So natural 20, that's great. So this is like an amazing hangout. You and Neil like hit it off. Like you guys like
it's meant just to
like
be.
Yeah. So tell me about your outing to the circus with Neil.
Oh, I don't know.
They get married.
There was popcorn, and the guy just gave it to us, so we didn't have to pay for it.
Free popcorn on the ground, just like kind of all over the place. And so we didn't have to pay for popcorn, and like the show was amazing, and I don't know, we found out that our favorite animal was the same animal, and
Okay. So what I'm going to say is the DM, because this two things. First of all, you can roll a nat 20, so immediately you and Neil are at like the max bond level already. You're at +3. So like you cannot get any higher as a bond with anyone at this point of the game. So you're maxed out your bond with Neil. You can still hang out with them, but you won't get any benefits of increasing your score.
Yeah.
Also, I will say that because circus is a special event, so whatever your I guess target would be for the acrobatic skills. If you were to choose, because you spend a lot of time at the circus and being just enamored with what they're doing and the trapeze and everything,
yeah.
If you ever decide to take the acrobatics skill, whatever your target is one less than it should be.
Ooh.
So if it was technically a 15, it's a 10. If it was a 10, it's a 5. And if it's a 5, I will say you don't even have to roll. You just pass that class. You have a question, Jill?
Yes. Philip in the chat says, does hanging out after achieving max bond risk losing that bond?
So
fight or something.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, what was that?
Is my sound cutting out a lot?
Sometimes,
Yeah,
not often.
a little here and there.
Here and there.
Yeah, so I was just saying it would make sense that you could go down, right?
Yes. And so the idea is, so let's say you had a 2 with Neil.
Yeah.
You still want to try to get to 3, but you might have a bad encounter with Neil. Things didn't go well the second time you hung out, and it goes down.
Yeah.
One of the things I had considered, and I haven't decided yet, is let's say with Neil you have a 3. It wouldn't make sense to say, like, now that we're... I didn't hear what you said, unfortunately. But it wouldn't make sense to be like, we are perfect friends. Let's never hang out again so that we don't ruin our friendship, right?
That's exactly what I said.
Yeah. So what I was thinking is if you go so many semesters without hanging out with them, maybe the score drops.
Yeah,
I think that makes sense.
Yeah. So you can go a semester without hanging out, but if you, as soon as you go more than 2 semesters without doing a thing, your friendship drops by 1. So it does require some upkeep, but you also risk not having things go well.
Yeah.
But because you already have a +3, then you're already in a better spot of rolling higher because of that +3.
Oh, right, because that's the modifier.
Right.
Yeah.
So you're more in a position to upkeep that friendship. And maybe I'll come up with some rules where it's like, if you manage to have so many like total points in the Hangouts, then your friendship goes to like another level or something like that, and we can add that in roleplay. But that's all things I'll work out. Yes, Jill.
Philip says, how about cases where you're less than 0? Do those go up to 0 after a lack of encounters? Like the sting is off?
I think so too. I think if
towards 0.
Yes, and that was a thing that I had thought of. So let's say you and Neil had a bad time and you're at a -1. If you give yourself some space,
yeah,
you know, the event kind of go, because you had a bad thing happen with
Chantel forgets that she got trampled at the
whatever, it was no big deal. Exactly. So you give her some space, and naturally everything kind of eventually goes back to 0 as being neutral. And I think that would be how I would handle that. Cool. So that is the first semester of the first year.
Yeah, and it's 9:45.
Yeah.
And so we're probably going to be wrapping up soon, and this kind of feels like it could be... Is there anything like last minute that you want us to do? Like, or is this like an okay...
This is a totally okay spot. Let me just check your sheets real quick. Yeah, so if you look at your sheet, so Jill, one of the things is for you is you have all your outcomes of, you've got a +1 for this, you got a +1 for that, and you ended up owing an extra 100 gold because of the tutelage.
Yeah.
And Katie, you got a good with Cleve, a bad with Chantal, and a really good with Neil. But there was no monetary gain or loss. So at this point, the idea is we basically do that for the rest of the school year. Mm-hmm. Like every semester we're going to roll things for events during the breaks. And then by the time you get to the end of your 3.5 years, you'll be in a position then to go for your internship, where we do a series of roles to test out the different things that you have learned, right?
One thing I was kind of curious about is if I had chosen like wizard or something, like armor and weapons and things like that aren't really as important. But there wasn't like a class for cantrips or anything like that. Is that something that you're considering to work on, or is that not, like, you're kind of thinking that most people will be more like melee classes?
Okay, well, that's a good question. I suppose I just assumed that, like, for magic, you would get what your class gives you.
Okay.
But that's a good question, and maybe cantrips are something that are easy enough that I could offer classes for non-magical classes to learn cantrips.
Because there could be something like you could have a class that's I don't know, something like class specific class or something that you don't really need to roll for. It's like something that's going on in the back, like narratively speaking, like something that's like a class that you have. It's like, this is your class class course. And that's where you're learning your spells, or you're learning your like class specific goodies
Build stuff.
but then like cantrip course
And
kind of cool.
Cantrips can work in the same sort of framework that you've set up here. So like if you're choosing to take the course on the X cantrip like Thorn Whip and you are a druid, then it's DC 5 to see if you learn it. But if you're like a fighter, then it's going to be DC 15 to learn Thorn Whip.
Right. So let's say that your primary is fighter and your secondary is druid.
Mm-hmm.
Then I guess you could learn a cantrip at 10 because your secondary is something that can learn it. That could work.
Yeah,
I just had to assume that like spellcasting classes would just get their regular spells as usual, because I didn't consider that as like the same as like knowing how to wield a weapon. But I guess it would make sense because
for me, like I was considering doing a magic class, but I was kind of turned off because all the courses were weapon and armor related. But that wouldn't be as relevant if I was interested in being a caster. Like if I was like, I want to be a sorcerer, but like, oh, I have to take like sword class and like armor class, you know.
Right. That makes sense.
Yeah.
I would just have to figure out what would make sense in a spellcasting class to learn this way versus like getting the way you typically learn spells as you level up.
Yeah.
Because you still get things as you level up, right? So for example, like once you get to pick your what is it called? Like for fighters, once you pick your fighting style, like at certain levels you gain things. That's just something that happens normally. Just like if you're a wizard, like, oh, now you can cast level 3 spells or whatever, like that would happen normally. So I would have to be careful not to teach things in the magic category that is taking away something from the spellcasters.
Right. Yeah.
But maybe as a spellcaster, you can only learn so many cantrips, right? Generally speaking.
Yes.
So maybe I could add cantrips in the weapons and armor category.
Yeah.
So.
And instead of like then you could just get extra cantrips.
Yeah, that would be really cool.
But I don't think I would like going to leveled spells.
Yeah, that'd be like you were saying, like messing with it too much, I think.
Right. But I do like the idea of adding cantrips in there.
Yeah, I think it would be really cool.
No, that's good.
And this is why we're doing this, is to help with some play testing and getting some outside voices.
Yeah. And I think that based on what we did, I think for the tools, since like it's limited as to what you can and can't do with the tools, that I think if it's something in your wheelhouse, it's a 5. And if it's outside, it's a 10.
Yeah, I think
15 is a little high for this. Because like the other one made sense with like your first and your primary and your secondary, but you don't really have a secondary background.
No. And I think it's cool too because the tools kind of add a lot of flavor as well. So it's kind of cool to be able to be proficient in more tools than just what your background would allow.
Right. So I would drop that to a 5 and 10 instead of the 5, 10, 15.
Cool.
And then add cantrips into the weapons armor category.
Yeah.
Because a cantrip can be used kind of like a weapon in a way.
Yeah.
You know,
totally.
A tactical weapon.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I like that.
Yeah, and there's some backgrounds, I think they're the ones in the Ravnica book where the backgrounds have a cantrip included. If I'm not mistaken. So it's kind of like, I think a cantrip is cool because even if a fighter were to take a cantrip, it won't break the game.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And if you have the right background, that just makes it easier for you to learn.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, I like that.
Cool. Awesome. Well, thank you for going through this with us. That was a really fun thing to experiment with.
Cool. Any final thoughts?
Oh, I was just going to say, I would be happy to do another stream and continue to work on these characters if you guys
I would love that. I didn't want to like monopolize JF's time, but I'm like, I would love to do this again. This was really cool.
JF, we would love to, because I do like we were just sort of starting to get into the like role playing part of it, and that's pretty cool and fun. I really like it. So
yeah, no, if we could totally do that if you want to do that sometime. What I could even do if you want is we could just scratch the first semester, and then I'll add the changes that we did, like with the cantrips and the tools, and we could just start the school year because now we know all the rules and everything, and we could just see how that goes.
Cantrip stuff, we don't need to scrap our first semester.
Yeah.
Okay.
We can.
Because I don't think I was going to pick a cantrip.
Yeah,
Okay.
I wasn't either, so that works.
Like
Perfect.
Jill's character and mine may still be able to, and I actually was thinking of trying to go, because I don't think I'm going to do any armor. So I do think I would probably pick like some kind of caster class as my secondary class, or maybe rogue. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, so
Cool.
Thank you for leading the stream today, JF. I really enjoyed being able to be kind of in the back seat and enjoying some character creation. And I look forward to having you back.
Well, thank you. It was a really fun time hanging out with you guys.
It's very creative
Yeah.
that you've created, and I like it.
Me too.
All right. Well, thank you, and thank you for everyone who joined in.
Yeah, thanks, Philip.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll talk to you all later, and thanks for watching and following, subscribing, and all those things that you might have done or are considering to do. Thank you, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah, check the Discord.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
join our Discord.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks for watching.